A Wall Street model for Canada's emerging pot industry. I don't think that's a good idea, but my guest does. That's next. This is Byline. A Wall Street model for a marijuana industry in Canada. As the push for legalization continues, some are already proposing how pot should be produced and traded.
I can't smoke pot because it's the same thing. I'm too old for it. Sometimes young people come up to me after shows, hey, do you want to smoke some pot? I'm like, can I get my portion to smoke without you alone later? Because I don't want to stand in a parking lot with some 20-year-olds.
Could a pot policy change be in place for Canada? The Health Canada-funded Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse say, well, they want a broad review of our country's marijuana policy. Now, our neighbors to the south say, well, there's a Wall Street model that's needed to allow the industry to participate in exchanges to buy, sell, or trade inventories in a fully disclosed and transparent marketplace. Steve Yanich is CEO of Amercanex, an electronic marketplace for the exchange of cannabis, and he joins me now to discuss. Steve, a Wall Street model for pot? This is going to have a lot of people scratching their heads.
Well, what we found on Wall Street over the decades that I've been there is you really need to move markets to electronic basis for the pure fact that the regulatory agencies need a way to track, have transparency in an industry, as well as have accountability. So we've built this model purely because we've seen the growth in the industry, and it's really running rampant across the world.
Now, you are based in Denver, Colorado. Colorado, of course, one of the states that's moved to legalization of marijuana. We're not there. Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau, a possible next prime minister of the country, wants to decriminalize. The Harper government, or he wants to legalize. The Harper government says they'll decriminalize it. Do either of those scenarios open up Canada for an electronic pot marketplace? Is this for broad consumer use, or is this even just for the medical marijuana industry that is growing in this country right now?
Well, currently it is for just the medical marijuana industry when it comes to Canada. And when you look at Canada, like Canada actually just opened up wholesale distribution across the entire country. So a venue like ours becomes very important for the agencies, the regulatory bodies, to be able to track and watch each and every transaction. The issues across the U.S. as well as Canada are purely the ability for agencies to have transparency in the marketplace, to be able to track where the product goes, and most importantly, make sure that it doesn't end up in the wrong hands.
All right, I am not a huge fan of moving to legalization. There's a lot of reasons for that, but it's not an issue that drives me one way or the other. I'm just not a participant in this marketplace. But I can see the private sector being able to do what the government could, and that's bring quality control and, as you say, the regulatory environment where transactions can be monitored. We had the government try and grow medical marijuana when it first started. They couldn't grow pot. You know, an actual weed, they couldn't grow it and have any viable THC content in it. So what else can the private sector bring that governments can't, as governments look to change the rules on all of this?
Well, what happens is most governments look to the private sector for technology like ourselves, and what you're finding is many new players in the industry are bringing technology, and the government agencies are looking at us purely for the fact that it's very difficult and very expensive to build it on your own. So if you have professionals from industries that have already done this, it just makes sense to use us.
All right. So with your type of scenario, you or a company like you would come to Canada and say, okay, we'll set up the exchange, and if you have a license to grow, we will monitor the transactions as you sell to Buddy, what's his face, that has the license to sell it or the license to use it. Is that essentially what you're offering?
Yeah, so what we're offering is the ability for the entire marketplace to have a venue to transact. And if you really look at it, it's almost like the E-Trade or the eBay of the cannabis industry on a wholesale level. So everybody has to be fully licensed, and it is on a wholesale level, so that what you have is growers who need to reach participants like dispensaries, and you put them together in one electronic venue. And what it does is it gives the regulatory agency one place to be able to see each and every transaction. What we give the ability to the regulatory agency is to watch the entire process from the inception of the plant all the way through the sales cycle till it reaches the consumer. And that's a powerful message.
All right, there is already a private sector option in place. It just happens to be the black market and quite often involves organized crime, be it street gangs, the mafia, bikers, quite often in my part of the country. Aren't you going to get resistance from folks like that? You know, the argument I always put to the people that say we need to legalize to get the criminal element out of it is these folks are not going to go legit and into the olive oil business. This is not an episode of The Godfather Part 2. So what do you say, you know, as far as that other black market, private sector distribution marketplace that's already there?
Yes, and that is the market that thrives, but also is the market that will sell the product to anybody, like children. What you do is you have to have the ability to control the substance. And the marketplace has that ability right now. If you really look at the way the market's been structured, yes, there's a tremendous black market that exists, but once you legalize it and control it and you use products that show transparency, what happens is you tend to start to eliminate the black market. We have a black market that exists in tobacco. It exists in luxury goods. It also exists in alcohol. So we know we'll never get rid of the black market, but we surely could put a big dent in it by making this legal and fully electronic.
All right, Steve, interesting ideas, and one that hopefully people take a look at, because I think the policy changes are coming one way or another regardless of what I think. We'll chat soon, perhaps. All right,
thank you.
All the headlines you need to know, including stories on the legalization of marijuana, sunnewsnetwork.ca. Stick around, we've got more to come.